Good to have you all here. Hi, Eduardo. All right. Great to have Tony. Wow, Tony, I haven't seen you in so long. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. All right, we've still got a few people joining, but this is a really important webinar that we're doing today because we're really doing a deep dive into donor retention and donor stewardship. Can you all hear me all right? Can you just give me a thumbs up?
Your voice is really soft.
It's soft? Well,
yeah.
Okay, well, let me come up with a solution. Let's see. All right. Is this better? Can
Yes.
you hear better?
Yes.
Yeah? Can you hear me? All right, perfect. Okay, great. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. We've got 1 hour and we have a lot to cover. And I am so excited to talk about this topic. This is something that is really near and dear to my heart. And I have seen huge turnarounds in fundraising success just by really doubling down and spending time on donor stewardship and donor retention. And we can get into the technical aspects of it. We can talk about reports. We can talk about gaps. We can talk about who's going to be doing these functions. But I think really at the end of the day, what we want to talk about is what is the philosophy behind it? What are we trying to accomplish with this? What is the big goal when we're talking about stewardship and retention? So today we have Ann Paton with us. Annie is one of my favorite gurus of major gifts, of donor stewardship. She and I have worked together for many years now. I want to say almost 10 years, Annie, but not sure that it goes back. It's at least 9. So it's a long time. And one of the reasons we continue to work together is because I have such confidence and have learned so much from her skill set and from her experience. She's a fundraising and public relations expert with nearly 40 years in the nonprofit sector. Annie has held leadership roles at Dartmouth College, Brown University, and Florida Atlantic University, overseeing major fundraising campaigns and increasing alumni participation. As the Vice President of Advancement at Barry University, she launched the Parents Fund and achieved record-breaking annual giving. Since retiring in 2011, Ann has worked with various nonprofits offering strategic planning, fundraising, and grant writing services. Ann is the president of Ann Paton & Associates, LLC, and serves on multiple boards, including the Delray Beach Downtown Library. Welcome, Annie. So good to have you with us. And I think you all know me. I'm Kirsten Stevens. I run the Kannico Agency. These webinars are our monthly commitment to the community for everyone to continue to improve and learn and gain access to tools and resources, and then hear from people like Annie who have just such a wealth of experience to share with us. So Annie, before we jump into a lot of the material, the content we want to talk about with stewardship and retention, you and I had a preliminary conversation about this subject. And I had to giggle because we sort of jumped into, well, how do we engage our donors and how do we steward them? And really, you mentioned this, we actually need to go backwards a little bit, right? So what happens when we have people in our ecosystem, for whatever reason, they've joined a newsletter list, they've attended an event. Where do we even start with individuals if we're looking to cultivate, if we're looking to grow our donor base and then focus on the stewardship and retention? Because we're seeing this over and over again. You and I have spoken that there are lists of people, but we don't know what to do with them.
Well, the thing that came out of our conversation, Kirsten, is that I went back to my roots and I thought again about the fact that capturing and retaining donors is part of a very studied process. And having worked for 2 universities that were founded back in the 1700s, they've had plenty of time to refine this process. So I thought that maybe we could start by talking about the elements of the process. So imagine that you have a wheel of donor cultivation. And the very first step at the top of the wheel is identifying the prospects. And then as you go around the wheel, the next part is qualifying the prospects. In other words, how do we prioritize those people that we're seeing as prospects? And the next part is cultivating those prospects according to how important we believe they are to us. And then soliciting those prospects, closing the gift, and then stewarding them. And this is a very important part, and it's a piece that not a lot of nonprofit organizations do very well. We want to make sure that we keep as many of those people who have made their first gift as possible, so that we can continue to help them become more engaged in the organization and have them continue to give larger gifts over the time that they stay with us, because they're so proud to be part of what we do.
And when someone says, okay, so that all makes sense, I understand the flow, what would my first move even be with a prospect? What could that be?
Let's talk for a minute about how your organizations identify prospects. There's a variety of different ways that this can happen. And the best thing would be if all the people that are involved in your organization, your staff, your board, your volunteers, all know that one of the most important things that they can do for your organization is to help you identify prospects. And that means that as they're out there in the community and they meet new people, they're thinking about their connection to your organization, and they're beginning to talk about what it is that they love about being part of it. And as they do so, other people sort of light up and say, oh, I'd love to learn more. Well, what do you do with that person that says, I'd love to learn more? And you have a list of people that are in your database. And they may be on that database for a whole variety of reasons. Maybe they came to an event. Maybe somebody did identify them. Maybe they've already made one small annual gift. All of those people are in an identification pool, no matter how they came to you. So then your next step is to qualify those people. And that's a major, major process. It has several steps to it.
Yeah. And who's involved in that?
It could be members of your staff. It could be, we very much hope that board members are part of this. The best possible scenario is if you have eager board members that want to be part of a fundraising committee. But if you can't establish a fundraising committee, one of your board's primary responsibilities is financial responsibility for your organization. So they should all be willing to be part of this process. So you're asking them, maybe in your first meeting, bring the names of 10 people to the table that you believe would make good prospects for our organization because of their interests. And then you're going to rank each one of those people on 2 levels. One is, what do you believe that person's capacity to give is? Is their capacity very high? Let's rank them a level 1. They're somewhere in the middle. Let's rank them a 2. We're really not sure. Let's rank them a 3. And so the other piece of that is their inclination. What do you think their inclination to give is? Do you have any evidence that they would be interested in our mission? And if you believe, because of a conversation that you've had with them, or them giving to a complementary organization, something like that, then you're going to rank them a 1, because you know that they have an interest in what you're doing.
Yes.
The 2 would maybe be, you know, they're philanthropic. you know that they're very involved in the community.
Yes.
That would make them a good bet. And then there's I think they made a good bet, but I really don't have enough information yet. That would make them a 3. So
Mhm.
ranking them in that way gives you the opportunity to figure out who you're going to prioritize. Who are you going to go after first?
Mhm. Mhm. And then Annie, the person who gave you those names, how involved do they stay in this process of prospecting, qualifying, potentially soliciting? Do they remain part of it? Let's say it's a
Well,
board
yes,
member who gave.
they do, because they're the ones who know this potential prospect in some
Mhm.
way.
Mhm.
So what you would really ideally like them to do is stay involved in the process. You want to be introduced to these people that they've brought to the table. So
Yes.
if you can get them to open that door
Mhm.
by inviting the person to come and have coffee with the two of you, inviting the person to come and tour your organization, or come to a small event that you have planned at your organization so that they can learn more. That's
Yes.
really, those kinds of things are really an ideal way to bring them into the fold.
Okay.
And then you likely have printed materials that you can share with them.
Mhm.
It's really a good idea to add them to your newsletter list. If you're an organization that has a periodic e-newsletter, you could add them to your newsletter list. And if possible, you could have a little private message to them saying, we still want you to be involved, and we'd love to have you learn more about what we're doing. So we're adding you to our newsletter list. Another way to do it is to send them printed material with a handwritten note. How many times do any of us get a handwritten note with a live stamp on the envelope and a handwritten address? These days, getting something like that feels like a gift, because it's so rare that somebody takes the time to write us a note. So that really stands out. And then if that board member who's been involved could call after you've met with the person, or a little while later, and say, just wanted to touch base with you again and see how you're enjoying the messages that we're sending to you.
Mhm.
And think of another step that you can have with that person so that you're continuing to engage them. And then invite them to your fundraiser, or begin to solicit them with perhaps an annual gift appeal.
Okay, quick question. You mentioned materials, sending some materials of the organization. What's a good thing to send to someone with the handwritten note?
I think you don't want to overwhelm them by sending them a whole raft of stuff. So if you just have a small brochure that describes what your basic programming is, and maybe has in it one story of some success that you've had, that's a great thing to do. Another
Okay.
really great thing to do is to pick out some heartwarming, compelling success that you've had.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you have clients like Milagro Center does, children who come after school and enjoy your programming, and one of them has gone on to college, and you have a picture of them graduating from high school and they're ready to go off to FAU or to
Yeah.
one of our Florida universities, and you're celebrating that person's success. You can send that little story and a picture of that person. Doesn't take a lot of time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
This is what your money is helping to provide. And this is just one example of hundreds of examples of Milagro Center's success.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I love that. I like that it's bite-sized. It's
Yeah.
not, you're not overwhelming them, like you said, especially right out of the gate. Okay. All right. So Tanaka, let's jump into the slides. I think we'll do a little bit. We're going to have some questions. We're going to go through the retaining donors section, Annie, and then what I would say is, as you come up with other anecdotes or stories, please go ahead and mention them, Annie,
Okay.
if you think of things in terms of like the stewarding, the cultivation, the solicitation, any part of the cycle. All right,
Okay.
so let's go with the first question. In your experience, what are some common mistakes nonprofits make when it comes to donor retention? And what changes did you implement in your past work that led to improvement?
Are you talking? Am I talking? What comes next?
I'm talking to you.
Okay, all right.
You're my expert today. So what are some of the common mistakes that nonprofits make in?
I think the most common mistake that I've seen is that once you have someone in your stable of donors and you trust that they love you so much that they're just going to keep on giving, you kind of stop paying attention to them because you don't think you have to pay attention to them anymore and you got a lot to do. You just trust that they're going to continue to give to you. That's a huge mistake, and it's one that is made all the time. Those are the people that need to be stewarded in a very special way. They need to be told in a variety of ways how important they are to your organization, because they're forming the foundation and you want to make sure that they stay with you and know how much you appreciate them. So one thing that I learned way back when, and I know you know this story because I tell it all the time, when I first started fundraising at Dartmouth, I met this man named Orton Hicks, who was the third generation at Dartmouth in the fundraising business. And he said, Annie, if you ask someone for money, they'll give you advice. If you ask them for advice, they'll give you money. So that loyal donor is going to feel more important and more invested in your organization if one of the ways that you steward them is just to call them up and say, hey, we're thinking about having this event coming up, but because you've been so involved in our organization, I really wanted to see what you thought of the theme of it and whether you could think of people in the community that might enjoy joining you for this event. Makes them feel important, gives them an opportunity to build their investment by being part of the problem solving. And they love that. And
so, sorry, go ahead, continue.
Go ahead. What were you going to
ask? I was going to ask you, so because when we talk about the complacency and we think people are just going to keep giving, which is what you mentioned, and then you just mentioned asking for advice, it feels like we should have a list of the tools that we can use and we can activate to keep that relationship alive and fresh, right? So that we're not just sending the handwritten card over and over again, that we're actually coming up with ways that we can be continuously engaging without repetition, right? So that there's some authenticity, there's some freshness to the relationship. That's what I'm hearing from you.
Yes. So other examples might be, and this is one that's been used by successful nonprofit organizations around the country, is that you create some special
Donna Sauer.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
You create some special opportunities for those people to be more involved in your organization. You create a special stable of things that nobody else gets. Little events that only those people are invited to, where you share, before you share with others, what some plans are for the future. Let's say you have a strategic plan and you're ready to move to the next step in realizing the goals of that plan. You announce it just to those people who have given at a certain level, and you let them know that they're the first ones to hear it. This could be something very simple where you invite them to your offices and you have a wine and cheese little something, and you do something like that periodically with them. Or if you have clients that have really great stories, maybe one of those clients is there with you and they tell you how much they appreciate what it is that the organization has done for them and how the organization has changed their life.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be a board member or one of your big donors, and you're asking them to say to that audience, we want to thank you for being part of our donor team. And I want to tell you why it means a lot to me, why I continue to give to this organization, and why I think it's so important to our community. And maybe you'd like to share something too. I want to give all of you an opportunity to say what this organization has meant. So everybody in the room starts to feel really good about the fact that they're part of it, because they're hearing these different stories about why people stay involved.
Donna Sauer.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get it.
You're popular today.
Yeah, I'll have to shut my phone off.
Okay, let's go to the next one, Tanaka. And you may have touched on this a little bit already, but do you have, Annie, is there a success story? Can you all hear me, by the way? I know that my volume was a little low. Okay.
Yep.
Can you share a success story where a nonprofit was able to turn around their donor retention rate, and what specific strategies made the biggest impact? So I know that we all look at our annual donor retention rate. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Maybe sometimes we're paying attention to it. Sometimes we're just aware that it's a little lower than it should be. But Annie, is there any situation that you can think of where an organization was able to really effectively re-engage some of their lapsed donors, and what some of those strategies might have been?
Well, you can treat the lapse donors almost in a similar way that you do to your regular donors. Make them feel special. Invite them to do something with you. It could be, again, a board member that's calling them and saying, hey, we've noticed that you haven't been part of our events for a while, and we would really like to update you on some really exciting things that are happening at the organization. Would you like to come to lunch with me and the executive director so that we can update you on what's happening? Because some really cool things are taking place and we want you to know about them. Because a lot of times what ends up happening is just that person is not being made to feel that they're appreciated. So you have to figure out a way that you can bring them back. Give them something special.
And what if they're not a major donor, but they're a big enough donor that it could make a difference? So what if they make, okay, so if a major gift for an organization, this particular organization is $5,000 or $10,000, and these are lapsed donors at maybe the $250 or the $500 mark, which are valuable, right? And let's say we have, I don't know, 40 of them that we could recapture. But let's say 2 or 3 years have gone by. How do we gracefully re-engage with them, having lost all that time, and kind of let them just sort of go by the wayside? What's a good strategy for those folks?
Well, because you're talking about 40 of them or a fairly significant number of them,
Yes.
One way would be to write to them or call them. Have a night where your board members are together and they're calling those people and just saying hello and letting them know how much. Trust me, no one expects that a board member of an organization is going to be in touch with them. That's a big deal. So
Yes.
get your board members to call those lapsed donors and say, we miss you. We know you haven't given in a number of years. We wanted to talk to you and find out if there's something that we did that made you stop giving. And we wanted to tell you how exciting things are here now and where we're headed. And we would love you to come back and be a part of it, and then invite them to do something with you. But hearing from a board member is a big deal. So that's one thing that would work. Another thing that might work is inviting them to come to an event that includes those lapsed donors and updates them on what's happening at your organization.
Mm-hmm. So a concerted effort to engage them in particular.
Right, right. Because that they're not going to expect that after they've lapsed for a couple of years that there's going to ever hear from you again.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's exactly right. Yes. And I think, Annie, this is where the segmenting is so important, isn't it? We can't just be sending everything to everyone and treating them all the same, correct?
That's right. So that's why the prioritization is important.
Mm-hmm.
We want to keep every donor that we can, but we can't afford, because most of us have very small staffs, we can't afford to spend the same amount of time on every level of donor.
Yes.
So when you create your annual development plan, and I think annual development plans are extremely important, and there are way too many nonprofit organizations that may have a strategic plan, the big picture, but
Mm-hmm.
they don't have a plan that annually operationalizes the steps of their strategic plan.
Mm-hmm.
And the development piece is so crucial to that.
Mm-hmm.
So sitting down and creating that annual plan that has a section in it that has a number of steps for each part of your donor base
Yes.
is really important. And you may be feeling overwhelmed right now because of all the things that we're talking about, but creating that annual operational plan gives you those guideposts that helps you realize the goals that you have set. And so you don't get lost.
Mm-hmm.
Without it, you're never going to be able to accomplish the things that we're talking about. So your quarterly operational plan will help you get there, and looking at it periodically to make sure you're on track, super important.
Annie, when I think of the annual development plan, and I especially, I know we have a great deal of attention always focused on the October, November, December timeline, right? But so there's no way that you can wait the entire year and start to communicate with people in October and expect them to give to your annual fund. So presumably on your annual development plan, you're looking at touch points in February, in April, right? Some sort of communication, whatever that sequence is going to be, so that you're not suddenly reaching out in October and saying, okay, we're hoping for your annual gift.
Well, that's the biggest complaint that donors have about nonprofit organizations, is that they don't hear from them until it's time to make their next gift.
Yes. Yes.
And they get disgusted because they feel like all you want me to do is open my wallet, and that's the only time I hear from you. You're not making them feel like they're part of the team. You're not asking them for advice. You're not sharing your successes with them on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
You're not inviting them in a special way to be a part of what you do.
Yes. Yes. Tanaka, let's go. I think the next slide is similar to what we've already talked about, but the one after that, which is about the top 3 indicators, let's go to that one. So Annie, what are the top 3 indicators that a donor is about to disengage? And what steps can be taken right away to prevent it, or hopefully attempt to prevent it? At least make some sort of effort to keep them connected. Do you think there are signs that we get from people?
Well, if you can tell that they've opened your newsletter or not, that's one way. If they call you and say they don't want to be on the list anymore, that happens a lot with people that are deciding that they're so angry that they're actually going to call you and say, take me off your mailing list. That's a really big sign. And it happens pretty frequently with people that are disengaging because they feel they haven't been treated right. So look for those sorts of things. If you call them and they don't answer, that's another thing. if they have always made an annual gift, let's say over the last 5 years, and they're not making one this year, then that's a signal that they're disengaging. And that is the worst signal of all. You don't want to get to that point with anybody. So really having periodically looking at your donor pool and making sure that you're not losing people, and then already having a plan for what you're going to do to re-engage anybody that's falling off. If you can get people in your organization thinking that way, we're all part of this team, and the most important thing we can do is treat our donors well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like you say, it's everyone, right? It's the board, it's the team, it's the entire organization.
Yeah, making a concerted effort to build that culture where everybody that's on the board, everybody that's on your advisory committee, everybody that's on your staff knows that this is the biggest priority for your organization, is to keep this family of donors close and make them feel special.
Yes. Yes. So you mentioned that people might start disengaging, or they could even call you if they feel that they were not treated right. Annie, is there what could come to mind in terms of how a donor may feel like they weren't treated right? Is that even as simple as the acknowledgement, or maintaining anonymity for a gift if they've requested? I mean, can it be that simple? Like, could that be something that upsets someone so much that they are going to want to disengage or ask to be taken off a list?
Oh yeah, I mean, sometimes honestly, the reason they want to disengage is because they just want to be the center of the universe, and we all have those donors that want to be the center of the universe, and they may sometimes even be unreasonable. And one of the other things you learn in the nonprofit world is that you leave your ego outside the door, and you just try to be as accommodating as possible, and you do a lot of listening, and you aren't defensive. You just try to fix whatever it is that that person is having a problem with. Because you don't, just like you would love to have them out there in the community saying how great it is to be involved with this organization, you don't want them out there in the community saying, never give to this organization, listen to how they treated me. That can really hurt you, depending on who that person's contacts are. So even if they're being unreasonable, you got to hold their hand and try to make them feel better.
So that reminds me of a situation that I witnessed not too long ago, where a donor was so incredibly unhappy about how they were treated. It had to do with the restriction or the allocation of their gift and where they wanted that gift going towards. And the circumstances changed at the organization, and they did not alert the donor. The donor found out in a roundabout way that the initiative had changed, that their funds were going to be going to, instead of a capital campaign, an operating campaign or operating funds campaign to support the project once it was completed. And they were extremely, extremely unhappy about it. So I think that's the other thing too, is that the more transparent we can be, right, the clearer we can be about how things are going, about how your gift is being used, the better, because it can, it can backfire.
Well, it's good that you
gift
up, because one of the best ways to steward your donors is to periodically tell them what the impact of their gift is. We talked earlier about sharing success stories. Telling those, it sounds like the donor you're talking about was a larger donor.
Yes.
Sharing your progress along the way with their gifts is hugely important, because they want to feel like they're part of the process. They can't control the process, but you want them to know that you're stewarding them and their gift in the way that you agreed to do. So keeping that in your mind is going to stop you from making that crucial error of using their gift in the wrong way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Or not asking them in advance, because
Right.
often they're okay with it. They just need to know in advance
Well,
what's
bringing them
happening.
in and making them part of the strategy
Yes.
is another piece of asking for their advice.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, this is the situation we're in. We know you gave your gift for this purpose, but we're in this very special situation now, and you can be part of the solution and explain the situation and ask for their advice. And almost always they're going to bend. If you have good good steps in place and a good reason why this needs to happen, and they can be part of the solution, they usually will really appreciate the fact that you brought them in and put your arm around them and said, this is what we're faced with. Help
Mm-hmm.
us solve it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so Tanaka, let's go to, I think we've talked a little bit about the next one, sort of significant turnoffs. Are there any others, Annie, that you can think of? Any other turnoffs for major donors that we need to be aware of? I mean, the biggest one I would say is not using the funds in the way we've indicated. Is there anything else that comes to mind?
If they feel left out
Mm,
for some reason, let's
mm,
say one of your one of your board members decides that they're going to have a parlor meeting at their house, and they're inviting their friends who are maybe not yet knowing anything about your organization and its mission, but you're trying to build your donor base. And so you're doing some prospecting by having this special event. And one of your regular donors finds out that you had this special event and they weren't invited. There's a reason why they weren't invited, because you're trying to keep the number small and you're trying to engage new people, but they're mad because they know people that were invited and they weren't invited. I mean, that can happen so easily and probably happens pretty frequently.
And is this just something that after the fact you just have to give them a call and explain what the
Yeah,
strategy was and what the plan
absolutely.
had been?
Explain. And
Okay.
then you can say, we're planning to do a series of these events because we need to expand our donor base. You know, we have this big project that we're trying to raise money for, and we need to expand our donor base. So these small events are going to be part of our strategy moving forward. Maybe you'd like to host one.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that's a great idea. Okay, good, good. I like that. All right. Yeah, that's funny. In communities, I can see how people would get offended and not understand why they weren't included. Yes, especially if they have friends in common. Yeah. All right. How do we ensure that major donors feel valued without overwhelming them or putting them off with constant requests, which this happens with people who tend to be naturally engaged and we just lean on them and lean on them and lean on them. And can you share an example of a time when you navigated this balance successfully? So how do we value them without overwhelming them or without continuing to make requests of them?
This happens all the time, that those top level donors, you go to them first because you feel most secure that they're going to help you.
Yes.
It's a huge mistake. I think that as we have new projects or new fundraising targets that we want to address,
Mm-hmm.
we need to be much more careful about the strategy. We look at the potential prospects that we want to have fund this, and you're looking at your CRM and you're looking at the last time this person made a gift. Hey, this person, remember that project that we did 3 months ago? This person gave $5,000 to that project. We can't put them on the list this time. You have to be more deliberate about these things that you're doing during the year, whether they're events or special project requests or whatever they are, that you're not asking the same people every time.
Annie, I have been guilty of this. I have been guilty of this.
We all
I
have.
admit it. It because it's comfortable and I've developed a rapport with them and I've gotten a little, maybe just a little complacent. And I think, well, I know that I can probably go to them and get some funding immediately for this project or for this initiative, right? And so I stopped working so hard on some of the other people that could step up, and I just go back to the people that I've been going after.
Well, I think that it's such a difficult thing in our nonprofit world because almost every small and medium-sized nonprofit feels understaffed.
Yes.
So it's hard for us to put strategy first when we're making our plans. We're
Mhm.
just, we have a list of things that we have to do, and
Yeah.
we want to check off as many things on that list as we can as fast as possible. But when you're talking about projects that include donors, I think we have to learn to stop ourselves before we make that check mark on the list and say, am I being strategic about who I'm asking? And take a little bit more time and look and see, did
Mhm.
I ask this person every time in the last 12 months that I had something special going on?
Mhm. Mhm.
And be a little bit more deliberate about who we choose to include so that we don't turn people off, because you don't want to lose even one of those major donors.
You know, Annie, this also speaks to the quality of the data that you're gathering and the notes that you're putting into your database. Because when you have these conversations with donors, they will drop clues in the conversation about what they're interested in, what their passion is, areas of the organization, maybe initiatives that they feel especially compelled to support. And I think if we can reserve for each donor an initiative or an outreach that is more carefully tailored to what speaks to them personally,
But you,
then we're making good use.
when I was working in higher ed, we used to use a prospect management template. So before this session, I tried to look to see if I could find a really good one similar to what we used to use. And I did find one. So I'm going to send that to you and Tanaka, and you can share it with people
Wonderful.
that were part of the discussion today. It's
Yes.
very detailed, but it's so good. So these people that are on your top list that you are thinking of as your best prospects, you want to continue to grow them.
Mm-hmm.
This will help you do that because it includes all the information that you're talking about. And it could be that you have such a sophisticated CRM system that it also it already has a prospect management tool.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you're not even using that because you haven't learned how. I wouldn't be surprised.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this will just help you think about how to move people along and
Yes.
all of the things that you need to know before you make your next action with that person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
The thing that we used to do before we would go to meet with a prospect to ask them for their next gift or to ask them to be involved in something new that we were doing was to do a meeting briefing. Let's say you are bringing a member of your board, your CEO, and you as the fundraiser. What is each person in that meeting going to say? What's their role going to be?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've all been in fundraising meetings that went off track because you were busy and you didn't really have a chance to talk about how you wanted the meeting to go before you got there. And so you've got the board member in tow and you're at the meeting and you're having lunch with the prospect and you are not accomplishing what you intended to accomplish. Those meeting briefings can change everything because what you're doing with your little team of people that are going to be part of the meeting is strategizing about what each person's going to say. And then you're also thinking about, what if the donor says this to us? What are we going to do then?
Mm-hmm.
So you're trying to look at what could happen in the meeting and have an answer for it up front. so that you look like the strongest team that you can possibly be as you're talking to that donor about what you want them to do.
So let me ask you, I'll play devil's advocate for a second. So let's say we're able to engage a lapsed donor through an invitation to a lunch. And I've got a board member with me, or I'm with the executive director, maybe I'm a development person. And the donor says, well, this is interesting. It's great to see you guys. Haven't heard anything from you for, I don't know, a year. What do you say to that?
Well, I think you have to be honest. I mean, there's really no excuse for them not hearing from you for a year.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be honest and say, we're here to tell you that you have been important to our organization. You have helped us accomplish these things. And we realized that we hadn't been in touch with you for too long. And we're here to say how sorry we are. And we have some really wonderful things happening now. And because of what you've done in the past, we think that these things are going to be of interest to you. And we want to re-engage you. And we want you to know that we will be holding your hand going forward. You know, there's nothing wrong with admitting you were wrong. And I think that in a lot of cases, that donor is going to be surprised that that board member and that CEO are saying, we made a mistake.
Yeah.
They're not trying to defend themselves. Their egos aren't number one.
Yes.
Prospect is number one.
Yes. Yes. Good answer. I love it. All right, let's go to the next one. What's the most critical thing to remember when stewarding major donors?
Imagine that you're a person who's a multimillionaire and that you would have the opportunity to engage with nonprofits in the community and really make a difference to their goals. How would you want to be treated? How would you want to be treated? What would make you feel important? What would make you feel valued? Think about that for a minute, because I think we forget that those donors are just like us, that they have hearts that are filled with passion, that they have goals that they want to meet. They're people. And don't think of them as the giant wallet. Think of them as the human being, and touch base with them on that level that connects you to them person to person. You're not being super formal and asking them like they were a corporate entity. You're making them feel as though they're an important part of your organization. They're an important part of its heart. Whole different way of looking at it, that you're not stiffly approaching them, but you're approaching them from the heart. I think it makes a really big difference.
Yes. You know, the formality, you mentioned being so formal, right? There's a time and a place for it. There is an occasion when you're going to be sending out an annual report, or you're going to be sending out an impact report. You're going to have a very nice letter that goes with it from the chair of the board or whomever. But there's so much to be said for the smaller, informal details, like sending a newspaper clipping. I still read the newspaper. I find articles all the time that make me think of donors or people that I'm connected to. Sending them a newspaper clipping, taking a picture of it and texting it to them or emailing it to them. Remembering things that they've talked about, restaurants that they like to go to that they've mentioned in town, or
well, that's why that prospect management template is so important, because it's to include those details. Maybe you're including their kids' names in there. Maybe you're including their birthday in there. You're including some personal points about their life that they've shared with you, so that you can bring those up when you're with them. They're going to become more and more engaged with you, the more human you are to them, and the more personal you're able to be they see
Yes.
how much you value the relationship.
And the problem is, if you don't spend time with them, either on the phone or in person, you don't get that information. You cannot glean that information, which will put such a different tone around the relationship unless you get to spend time with them. So, good ways to do that. If you have a board of directors and an event coming up, and you assign each board member one or two people to speak with at the event, or to steward, or to be the facilitator for at the event. Let them get to know them a bit, and then they can feed that information back to you that you can then put in your database about that individual. But if we don't spend that time with our prospects and our donors, we don't have those valuable nuggets that we can go back to when we're trying to personalize this relationship and really form a connection with people. But it can be, I mean, Annie, I bet you can think of relationships with your past relationships with donors that have been almost like some of your deepest friendships, right? Like if you
Oh,
think on a personal level, you're like, yeah, my relationship with that donor was almost as rich as my personal friendship with my best friend from college.
well, sometimes they did become personal
Yes.
friends.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had, we could sit here and tell lots of stories, I'm sure, about those relationships. I'm sitting in my office right now and I have a big bookcase on the wall that has tons of pictures in it. And a lot of those pictures are pictures of donors that I became friends with over the years. They sort of adopted me, and it was just the most glorious experience ever because they were the most interesting people. So
Mm-hmm.
just like you're putting your arm around them, they're ultimately putting their arm around you. If you do treat them in that special way and remember those things that they're sharing with you about their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And teaching your board members to be part of that can be a magical experience. It could make their experience as board members stop being that stuffy, let's vote on the budget. And that's all being part of the board is about, is
Yes.
saying yes or no
Mm-hmm.
to a whole variety of things.
Mm-hmm.
But to really be part of the beating heart of the organization by helping to cultivate these relationships changes their role as board members and makes it something that has heart to it.
Yes, absolutely. Oof, I love that. All right. Let's see. Next one. Tell us about a time when you had a breakthrough moment in donor stewardship where a personal touch or a new strategy created a lasting impact. Can you think of something there, Annie?
When I was at Brown, there was a chancellor who had been at the university for many, many years, and he became a mentor for me. And I was very lucky that he allowed me to sit in his office with him as many times as he did. And he loved to give little gifts. They were always something that were part of the history of the university that he had used maybe during a previous campaign or something like that. He wanted me to understand what the history of the university was. And so he would tell me these stories, and then sometimes he would go through his desk or grab something out of his bookcase that would say, and this was part of the gift that we gave donors 25 years ago when we had XYZ campaign, and it was such a big deal. So after a while, I had, a few of these little things that the chancellor had shared with me. And there was a gentleman in New York who had been kicked out of Brown as a sophomore because he drank too much and got in trouble, but he owned a big advertising agency in New York City. And he was one of the prospects for the medical school's first big campaign. And I was running that campaign. And I thought, oh my God, how am I going to re-engage this guy? He got kicked out as a sophomore. So one of the things that I had in my little collection from the chancellor was from a campaign when this gentleman had been a student at the school. So he agreed, surprisingly, he agreed to meet with me. And the way that I got through the door with him was because he was the head of an advertising agency and we were starting this campaign. I was begging him to give me advice about some key points having to do with how we were going to market the campaign to our medical school alumni and other key people in the community.
Mm-hmm.
So he agreed to meet with me. So I found this little object. It was a little metal depiction of one of the favorite buildings on the Brown campus. And I brought it with me. And before I left, I said, I know your story, and I feel so grateful that even though you didn't have the best experience and you didn't get to complete your undergraduate at Brown, I know you probably love that campus as much as I do. I mean, I'm not a graduate of Brown, but when I walk across that campus, it always feels so special to me. And he's nodding his head. And he said, yep, I miss it. I would love to go back there sometime. And so I gave him this little building. I put it in his hand and I said, well, here you go. I said, this may not get you back on campus, but I brought a piece of the campus with me. And he took it, and I could tell that he was feeling sort of emotional about it because he was quiet for a couple of minutes, which seemed like an hour to me because I was afraid maybe I'd done the wrong thing. But really what happened was it kind of bonded me to him.
Yeah.
And he introduced me to so many people in New York that he knew, and he would put me up at his club when I came to New York. Over time, we got to be close, and he gave me the best advice for the campaign. It was just taking a chance, but it was a chance that connected to something that was personal to him, and it worked.
Yeah.
So that's just one example. Like sometimes you have to use your imagination. You have to take a chance about what it is that's going to connect you to that person. And it did turn his relationship around. And guess what? That was my first $1 million gift in that campaign.
Wow. Wow. That's incredible. Oh my goodness. So that's completely unexpected. Amazing. Amazing, amazing. Tanaka, we're going to have to wrap up because we're getting close to the top of the hour here. So let's go to Annie's information in case anyone wants to reach out to her. You have that. But I wanted to just talk about three things, Annie, really quickly, because I think they're important tools. So the Libunts, the Cybunts, and your donor retention rate, right? These are the three tools that you're going to be leaning on heavily to give you an idea of how you're doing with your donor stewardship and your donor retention. So can you just tell us a little bit about each of those? What's the Libunt? What's the Cybunt? What's the donor retention rate?
Oh, this is one of my favorite things because I looked at this over and over and over and over again throughout the year. Those Libunts are your most important prospects beyond the people that are already giving to you. Those Libunts are everything. And Libunt means last year, but not this year. So it'll be last year, but not this year yet.
Okay. So let's say if it's somebody who gave in February of 24 and we're August of 25, technically they're already in that Libunt territory.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And that's where I need to be focusing a lot of my energy, right? Is on
that they deserve a lot of your energy.
Okay.
You could even look at what your track record is of re-engaging Libunts over the last few years and how you re-engage those Libunts and how can you step it up next time.
Okay. Okay.
Looking back to see how many
Yeah.
donors you were able to retain
Mm-hmm.
is really, really important. And then coming up with a strategy about how you bring them back, we've already talked about that.
Yep.
But this is the most important thing for you to track. Who
Mm-hmm.
are the people? Who are the people who are now in Libent category? We have this much time to get them back. What are we going to do? And
Mm-hmm.
you're looking at how much they've given you, how many years in a row they've given, so that you can prioritize how you're going to spend that little bit of time that you have to grab them
Yeah.
back again.
And there's a financial value to this. You could, because you can see what their giving value has been over
Right.
the course of the lifetime of them as donors. So what about the SIBUNs? How do
5
we,
months is some year, but not this.
mm-hmm.
So
Maybe 2 years ago,
2 years
maybe
or
3 years.
3 years, you want, those are your most important side months. How long have they lapsed? Those that have lapsed for a shorter period of time and gave the most money in their last gift, you can figure out how to prioritize them and what you're going to do to get them back. Doing the
Yes.
most personal things with the people who had the highest level of giving previously.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then your donor retention rate, right? So this is something we constantly need to be aware of.
People don't look at that as much as you would expect.
I know.
As you're mapping out what you're going to do over the year, you look at what your donor retention rate was last year, make yourself a goal and say, we're going to improve our donor retention rate by 10%. And here's what we plan to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, imagine if you were with your board's fundraising committee, or even with your whole board, and you were able to say, we have a plan to bring back those lapsed donors.
Yes.
That may not be something that you ever said in a board meeting before, but don't you think your board members, a lot of your board members are business people. They want to bring back their customers too. So they're
Sure.
going to be impressed by the fact that you have this goal.
Yes.
And it's a way of drawing them in. And they may even ask you some questions. Well, what's your plan?
Mm-hmm.
Because that feels similar to them from their business backgrounds. And
Mm-hmm.
they may be able to even help you. Well, what about this? Or what about that?
Yes. Yes. Excellent. Great. Good. And we want them involved in all of this, right? This is the entire organization needs to be on the same page. Plus, I always think, okay, I'd like the board to know we're doing everything possible. We're going down every avenue here. We are not leaving anything unturned. We can't honestly say that we are making a full concerted effort in the development space unless we're working on each one of these. So, Annie,
Well,
thank you.
if you could come up with at every single board meeting, some little nugget of something that you're doing that you can share with your board members, that's going to make
Yes.
them feel like you're on top of things. That's going to help them feel more engaged, and it's going to help them feel more like they want to be helpful to you because they can see that you know what you're doing and that
That's a great suggestion. Great suggestion. The other thing is, even just for them to be aware who in the community we're prospecting, foundations we're prospecting, because we don't know who the board may know or may have a connection to as well, or a suggestion about. So absolutely. Okay, good. Thank you. Any last parting words for us, Annie? You've been amazing. Thank you for sharing your.
I just feel so lucky to be part of this conversation because this process is so much part of my past and so much a part of my heart. And I love to share it with other people. If anybody wants to be in touch with me and ask questions or needs help, happy to help. And I will send you some articles that I found as I was doing research for today that may be helpful to people, and you can decide to share them with everybody.
And then that prospect template that you have.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Oh, so exciting. Thank you very much, Annie. All right. And then our next webinar is September 9th, and we're going to be talking about fundraising campaigns. And I believe we have a guest speaker, but I don't know if I'm able to disclose that just yet, if we have full confirmation. But we are talking about fundraising campaigns, and that's September 9th. So can't wait to see you all. We'll get the webinar up on the website so that you can watch the replay. And we're going to have resources available. And Glenn, thank you. Love you too. Awesome to see you. thank you all so much for being here and being part of this community. And Annie, you're just amazing. Stay, everyone. Thank you so much for being here.